Okay, so we're going to do a GET request to our get data file to pull back some of the JSON. This method that we're going to use, you're only going to see it now, you'll probably never ever use it again. Number one, it's what we call deprecated. In other words, we've gotten rid of it because it's proven to be not very good, having sort of synchronous calls from JavaScript. There's not really much need for it. Secondly, there are a whole bunch of libraries that you can add into JavaScript. One called jQuery, which makes calling external sites and in particular JSON a little, they think easier. It isn't easier, it's harder to program with, but certainly it handles the information a lot better. So although I'm going to show you how to do this, you must remember that this is sort of deprecated and doesn't exist anymore. But I think it's useful to take you through the process. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put this back to a button. For some unknown reason, I don't get, when I press the word press me, I don't get any feeling, any tactile stuff with it, so I prefer a button so I can say I'm actually pressing it. So I'm going to put that back to a button. There we go. And the next thing I'm going to do is get rid of this alert. I don't want to be popping up an alert box, unless of course my JSON is in the alert box. I could do that, but yeah, I'll have a look at that a bit later on. But I'm just going to put it on the page as though we were back in the early videos when we just clicked on the submit button and all the data came back. So we're just going to reproduce that functionality. So taking a look around, I think we're fine. We could choose either method. We could choose this on click, or we could choose to add an event listener. I'm going to stick with this one for the time being. Now, the code that we're going to need, we need a variable to hold the results, and the results are going to be stored in my request. I could have called that anything. I could have called it Bob. It's completely my choice. My request is equal to, now this is an object in JavaScript, and it's called an XML HTTP request. So we're going to have a new one. We're going to create one of these, and it holds, or the purpose of it is it can do a lot of things behind the scenes, and we're just going to ask it for one or two bits and pieces. The first thing we're going to do, so now we've set up our object, or we've got an object called my request. I'm going to open the page. So my request, let's just choose this, let's be lazy. My request dot open, and we've got to give a couple of parameters. Now this is where we can set it up to be the get request. So we've now said that it's going to be a get. We've got to give it the file name that we're looking for, which is getData.php, and that must be in quotes. And finally, we need to say whether it's synchronous or asynchronous. Now, I've never used this in an asynchronous fashion, but I'm going to set it to false, which means that what we're doing is a synchronous call. In other words, it's not going to run in the background. It's going to just do one thing after another. So now that I've done that, I need to actually call it. So my request dot send, and I'm going to send nothing at all. And finally, now that let's show it. Let's save it, reload the page, press the button. We're getting nothing at all back. Strangely, there is stuff there. We're just not accessing it. It's stored in this HTML request object, okay, which is now called my request, and it's in a little method called response text. So if I choose the document, which is the web page, and I choose to write to it, if I choose to write my request, the object, and call the method response.text, because that's where the response is stored, that should place all the items on the screen. So if I save that, reload this page and press me, there we go. We've got a synchronous call. We've got the get data. It's pulled all the data back. We're exactly the same place as we were before, which is good in one respect, but not good in many other respects. Number one, we still can't play with the data, although we do have the data in response.text that we could probably work our way through. But to be honest, there's far better methods that we can do in an asynchronous fashion. In other words, allow the browser to continue doing what it's doing while this sort of works things out in the background, does all the calling in the background. Because the way it's working at the moment, if there was 1 million records and it took half an hour to download those 1 million records, our browser would lock up for half an hour. We don't want that to happen. We want to still be able to use our browser, switch between pages whilst the data is being downloaded, and that would be through an asynchronous request. So we've now repeated our earlier methods, but we've done it all in JavaScript this time. Okay, and we've got to pretty much the same place that we got to with Python and Android. Not going to go too much in depth with it. I shall deal with the data that comes back in response.text, the JSON, and play around with the JSON in a section called APIs, not in how to get or post the information. So my next challenge really for you is to actually pull back specific data using a GET request and the surname. So we call another file like getPerson, or we can use a post request and send information that we capture from a form, all in JavaScript. From then on, we'll look at APIs and how we can pass this information and use it.